Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Thank you very much for watching and listening. If you're listening, you're on one of the major podcast platforms all across the planet. We are on all of them. And if you're watching, you're probably on YouTube or Rumble. Please make sure that you go to Rumble and subscribe to us over there as well, please. We've been on YouTube. We like YouTube, have nothing against YouTube, but they decided that they were going to not allow us to monetize these videos anymore. So we're looking for sponsors. If you want to sponsor the program, please head over to our GoFundMe page. It would be great if you can contribute whatever you can, and consider being a monthly sponsor so we can keep this message going. I am not a salesman, and I don't like asking the question, but the truth of the matter is we need to have funding in order to keep this thing going. So if you feel like you can, it would be an honor and a blessing for us if you would donate to that GoFundMe page. And so there it is. Also, if you know anybody who builds websites, I'm looking for somebody to perhaps build a website and we can trade out some advertising or something on the program so we can store and house our videos there so that we escape the threat of censorship. Also, a special thanks to a couple of folks. I got a nice note in the mail today from Barbara Thompson, her and her husband Jim. Her husband, Jim, actually worked with my dad, Gene Billings, out at Ash Grove Cement Company for many, many years. God bless Jim and Barbara. Thank you for the very lovely, nice note that you sent, and I'm glad that you watched the show. And Barbara, I do remember you from St. Thomas Aquinas when I was a teacher out there. God bless you both, and thank you. And also, I met over the phone today a very nice couple from Lexington, Missouri. Good to speak with you. It's a small world, right? You were at a car dealership buying a car, talking to the auto dealer, and he said, hey, he was going to run some advertising on the program, and he asked, I guess, who do you listen to? And you guys said, we watched The Right Side with Doug Billings. And he said, well, how about that? I've got him on the phone right now. And you go, no way. Monty and Katie from Lexington. And so thank you guys, Katie, Monty. It was a real pleasure being able to speak with you. Thank you for your support. It really is a blessing and an honor, and I mean that truly. And to all of you around the world, I feel the same way about all of you. This show, this channel has just been, it's been received so well, and I'm every day grateful for it, that so many people in the United States and around the world send messages and so forth on YouTube and in other places. So go to Rumble, all of you. Please begin to subscribe to Rumble, the Doug Billings, Right Side with Doug Billings over there. Consider going to GoFundMe and supporting the program. I'm also on Facebook, and you can find me there. I don't accept a lot of friends on my personal Facebook page, but on the Right Side with Doug Billings page, please go over there, and that's at The Right Side with Doug Billings, all one big long word, at The Right Side with Doug Billings on Facebook, at Doug Billings on Twitter, and if you're on Telegram, The Right Side with Doug Billings, and Clout Hub, head to Clout Hub. Clout Hub's a very good alternative since Parler is shut down. Clout Hub's far and above better. I think they've got a better interface than Parler, to be honest with you. And so check out our page over there on Clout Hub, CLOUTHUB, and we are there as well. All right. And as always, couldn't be a show if I didn't mention my friend, the Commander's Artist. TheCommandersArtist.com. Some of the best artistic works of patriotism you will ever find. TheCommandersArtist.com. Check him out. You can see one of his prints, one of my favorites, over my head here in the studio. That particular one is called My Chosen Leader, and indeed President Trump is, I believe. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, today's show, a little bit non-traditional. This will be different because after the absolute circus show that we've seen the last couple of days, as I adjust my computer, I just have to tell you, I think the messages that I read and the sense that I get is that, wow, we just need some hope, man. And thanks, Doug, for giving us hope, and thanks for remaining positive. Thanks for being faithful to God and his divine providence and his presence in all of this. And truly, I mean, that you watch me long enough and you get a sense that that's where my head is, that's where my heart is, and that's where my soul is, with God and his divine providence and how he interacts with us in this world. So if you could bear with me today, I'm going to diverge away from just pure politics and go into the realm of hope based on four true stories. Four true stories that hopefully will illustrate how, in the midst of all of this nightmare that we're in now with Administrator Biden apparently in the Oval Office, how we can see hope through the darkness. And it's a time to tell these stories, I think. It's a time that the world needs to hear hope, and hope outside of the realm of just pure politics. And you'll get a glimpse into my head and into my soul and my heart when you hear these stories, because they resonate with me, and I hope they resonate with you as well. Now that Trump is acquitted of the sham circus clown show that was this impeachment trial, he's going to be free to re-engage in politics. We hope that he does, and I will endeavor. As you know, General Flynn will be on the show March 2nd, and you can bet I'll be asking the general about President Trump. And there's a yet to be named big name coming up on that show with the general, someone who you all love and you all have heard about, you all know well, will be appearing with the general on the show March 2nd. So make sure you mark your calendars for that. If we're not kicked out of YouTube, it will be here March 2nd. The show will be recorded the morning of the 2nd, and it will drop sometime around dinner time on that evening. Okay, so hope and four stories. I want to tell you the first story of hope. There was once this young man. These are all true stories, by the way. These are not just made up stories to give us hope. These are true stories about people who faced adversity, overcame it, and really that's what those of us on the right side do. We, because our parents didn't give us participation trophies just to show up, we had to earn our rewards and our trophies. We had to overcome tragedy, adversity, and challenges in life. We weren't given things for free. We had to work for what we have, and we understand that. And I know that you in this audience are among the most intellectually mature people in all of podcast land. So on this casual Saturday, let me begin. The first story I just call a young man and his girlfriend. There was this young man and this young woman who were madly in love with each other in February of 1989. And as they met, courted each other, dated each other, they had begun to talk about marriage. And they were deeply in love. And it was a good, wholesome, godly love. It involved a relationship with the Lord and with each other. And as time went on, and as they began to talk about possibilities of becoming engaged, and although they weren't yet technically engaged, they considered themselves to be engaged. Driving home one night from dinner, the young man driving his girlfriend home, they were hit by a drunk driver. On the young man's side, the drunk driver hit the rear passenger door, the driver's side rear door, and spun the car around, and the car smashed in to a streetlight pole on the young lady's side of the vehicle. She was immediately knocked unconscious. The young man was not hurt severely at all, had a slight cut on his forehead, looked over at his girlfriend, slumped over, and blood immediately began to pour from her nose. There was a police officer at a local convenience store just off the corner, yelled for an ambulance, and long story short, the young woman spent the next 26 years in a semi-vegetative state, able to respond to noises and jokes and so forth, but never fully able to communicate. The young man spent the next 3 years by her side, visiting almost every day, not quite, writing her poetry, singing her silly songs, recalling the days of their courtship, and continuing to stand by and wait. Eventually, as it became clear that she may never recover, the family, one of the brothers of the girl, kindly told the young man, look, get on with your life. You don't need to, you have a life to live. She has lost her ability to carry on with a normal life. There's no reason for two lives to be wasted. And again, trying to make a long story short, the young man did eventually move away and fall faded out of that situation, never forgot the young woman, often remembered her on her birthday, and so forth. 26 years later, the young woman passed away. Just 23 when the accident happened, her whole life robbed from her. And the young man, trying to see and make sense of that, realized, there were a lot of people who meant well, and a lot of people that offered sympathy and condolences and so forth. But some people blamed, how could God let something like this happen? How could God, the loving, all powerful, this loving God, let anything like this happen? And of course, we all have heard people who say those kinds of things when bad things happen to good people. And my story is this young man, as he began to reflect and journal on that, understood that it wasn't God that caused this accident. We live in a world that's, in a way, set on automatic. And there are things called accidents. There are things called people's free will to make decisions, to get behind the wheel of a car when they've had too much to drink. There's weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, they happen. There's biology. People get cancer, people get viruses, and so forth. So it wasn't so much that the young man believed that God caused the accident. He didn't. He didn't believe that at all. In fact, when those kinds of things happened, according to this young man, he decided that it's in those kinds of moments where God wants us to run to him, to ask for support and help, and God offers it through the guise of other people, right? God reveals himself most commonly through other people and through events. God also reveals himself through time and in his time. And this young man began to heal and move on with his life. The young girl wasn't able to. The young man went to the court hearing for the gentleman who was drunk and hit them. And he was sentenced to 2 years, the drunk driver. And about 6 months later, perhaps, the drunk driver came up for parole. And so the parents of the young girl, along with this young man, went to speak to the parole board. And they gave speeches about how their lives were impacted and so forth. And the young man looked at the drunk driver, who was in prison now, and said, "I forgive you." And I say that because forgiveness is so difficult for all of us. Loving people is easy, right? It's the easy thing, especially when we're loved in return. But forgiveness is difficult. And in the young man's reasoning, he says, "I forgive you because if I don't, you win. And I can't let you win. So I forgive you so that I can move on and that this family can move on." And that's the key, ladies and gentlemen. That's the beauty of forgiveness. We don't forgive people for them. We forgive people for us so that we can go on. And between the two greatest virtues of all, love and forgiveness, love being the most important of all of the virtues, the paradox is that without forgiveness, love can't survive. And if you can't forgive someone, you'll never be able to truly and deeply love anybody else. That was the conclusion that this young man drew, and that's why he offered that. The second story is about a young man who encountered divorce. He didn't want the divorce. False accusations were made against him, and a long story short was the wife couldn't handle that kind of adversity. They had only been married about a year, maybe 19 months or so. The young man comes home from playing a softball game at church, and the sheriff knocks on their door, and he answers it, and he's given 20 minutes to gather some personal items and leave because he says that your wife has filed for divorce and you've got to leave the house. Shattered and heartbroken, he depended on his family, his sister had worked for a real estate company and provided a studio apartment for which the young man was grateful. And that night, that first night out of the house, being kicked out of his house, he recalls in his story that he knelt in the middle of this small studio apartment and wept. And the pain and the loneliness and the feeling of failure surrounded him and engulfed him. And it was as if there was a voice that said, "Feel it. Let it percolate through you, this pain. Don't put it aside. Let this work its way through you. Hold on tight to this pain, said the voice. Later, as the young man recalled and reflected on that, he's not saying that he had a vision or that it was the voice of God, but it was that inner voice that we sometimes hear, that gut feeling, which can sometimes be the voice of God, I think, right, in situations like that. And he did. He decided to let that pain percolate through him, to hold on to it and let it envelop him. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I think the moral of that story is that when we're faced with tragedy and adversity in life, we so often try to ignore it and compartmentalize it away from us, much like what we're doing now in the world. A lot of us are in these kinds of situations, not just divorce or being hit by a drunk driver, but the uncertainty of politics, the uncertainty of the United States and its influence in the world, and therefore those of you who are watching in other countries, the uncertainty that you feel. But the moral of this story is feel the pain that you are enduring, embrace it and hold on tight and let it percolate through you. And that might sound counterintuitive, but the only way that you can work your way through pain is to experience it and get to the other side. Hold on to friends, hold on to family, because again, it's in those ways that God reveals himself and that you're able to finally move on. And again, as in the first story, forgive. It's so important so that you can go on. The next story, again, a young man at home, and he's watching a football game, as the story goes. It's in the winter. It's about 2010. He's about 42 years old or so, a young man, and goes to the bathroom, and it's not right. Blood red, ladies and gentlemen. Not to be graphic, but there it is. Well, this guy doesn't take that kind of thing lightly. He goes to the clinic right away, the urgent care. Well, it's probably a urinary tract infection, a bladder infection, so we'll get it checked out. Make an appointment with your primary care physician. Long story short, cancer, bladder cancer. Not only just, bladder cancer is embarrassing enough, according to this guy in the story, but it was myxoid leiomyosarcoma, the words he will never forget, he said. And not only is that a rare form of cancer, he's the only person that has ever had it in his bladder, and he becomes a case study. Well, long story short, again, I know your time is precious. The good people at the medical center, it's a sarcoma, won't respond to chemo or radiation, so they have to cut the cancer out of him. So they do. He has a major operation, a major surgery, and they save him. They take the cancer out of him. And for now, 10 or 12 years, he's been cancer-free. And there's not a moment that goes by now in that young man's life where he doesn't hear the story of someone else who's a cancer fighter and a warrior, where he doesn't reach out and ask, is there anything I can do for you? I've been down that road. The same story applies to the guy who got a divorce, too. You see, prior to these stories, prior to facing these challenges, the individual prior wouldn't have bothered. The depth and width of their sorrow or sympathy might have been, I'm sorry to hear that. See you later. But now you see, since they've been through these things, when they hear of other people going through similar crises, they take the time to reach out to make sure that they're okay. And that's the pure essence of us as human beings. That's the natural good in us. And we are naturally good beings, human beings are. So the cancer was cured, taken out of him. He's cured. He's well, and now he makes it a point to visit people who are suffering from that disease and offer support in whatever way he can. And that's how his life was altered from that. And then the final and last story, ladies and gentlemen, involves a father who had a child who was born with Down syndrome. Now, this young man and his wife had all of the normal tests. The wife was only 35 years old. Nothing to indicate there was any kind of abnormality with the pregnancy. So in the delivery room, the baby is born, and instead of the father being able to cut the cord, the nurses kind of looked at him. The doctor worked on the baby for a while, and they rushed the baby off to NICU, the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. What's going on? He didn't know what was happening. The doctor leaves, comes back, and delivers the news. It appears that your son has signs and symptoms of Down syndrome. And the young man, poof, a million thoughts went through his head. Is the baby going to live? Is the baby going to die? Can I handle this? Is he going to have friends? Is he going to have a meaningful life? Can I handle this? Will he graduate? Will he go to school? Will he be able to fall in love one day? Will he compete in sports? And will we be able to cheer him on? Can I handle this? You see, those were the thoughts that this young man felt. And if you notice, can I handle this? The selfish, recurring thought, can I handle this? Kept on repeating in these 1,000,001 thoughts that were racing through his head. As it turned out, this particular hospital had a well-connected network with other parents who had also had children with Down syndrome. And the social worker at the hospital brought some parents and their children and toddlers so that the young man and his wife could see the other children, the toddlers with Downs. And it began to dawn. The dawn of blessing of this story was the young man realized that this wasn't devastating. This wasn't something that couldn't be overcome. And yes, he could handle it. You see, as this Down syndrome child grew, the father often referred to the extra chromosome that these kids have. They have an extra chromosome on the 21st rung. Trisomy 21, this young man would say in a story, is the genetic addition that these people have, an extra 21st chromosome. So this young father often referred to that as the divine chromosome, because it was as if God had reached out and said, this is how you people should see the creation that I've given you. Because these people, these wonderful, beautiful children and people who have Down syndrome, see the world in all of its joy and wonder. They take joy in the simple. They are almost always happy. Now, they have their days, like all of us, but they take joy in the simple. They have no venom, no prejudices, no pre-wired hatred. They love everybody, and they're just happy. And so the young father, the dawning of blessing for him was that this is no tragedy. And yes, by the way, my son did compete in the Special Olympics and won the 50-yard dash. He does have a girlfriend. He is in high school, currently a senior in high school and going to typical classrooms, having some work done with speech and life skills and so forth. But every milestone that any typical kid would achieve, this young man is achieving them as well, and so do most people who have Down syndrome. So you see, it's a matter of perspective, and there's hope. And these four stories remind us that no matter the adversity and the challenges that we face, there's hope, and there's a way that we get through it by embracing the situation, whatever it is. And I know, again, that sounds counterintuitive, but embracing it and letting it percolate through us. Now, the one common thread of all of these stories, beyond just getting through adversity and challenges, is that the young man in each one of these stories is me, ladies and gentlemen. It's me. And I tell you this, I give you this peek into my life and into my background so that you might have hope from it, so that you can inspire others to face tragedy, adversity, and challenges that we all have and that we all face, but with people who tend to want to give up. And I would ask you a favor as you reflect on these stories and how they interact with your life. Perhaps there's some intersections of these stories, or at least elements of them that you've experienced. One favor that I would ask you, if you ever meet a person who has been pre-diagnosed with a Down syndrome pregnancy, would you please ask them to either contact me or any organization. There's one of the top organizations in the country for Down syndrome people, the children and their families, is the Down Syndrome Guild of Kansas City. One of the best in the country. Not kidding you. I used to serve on the board of directors for that organization, and it is a phenomenal mechanism of support and education. But primarily, reach out to me or this group if you ever encounter someone who has a pregnancy pre-diagnosed with Down syndrome, because 90% or more of people who are faced with those diagnoses abort the baby. And there's no reason. These babies are beautiful. And these people, as they grow up, are wonderful people that have every capacity that you and I do for a meaningful life. And so, challenges and adversity, we all face them. And today, I know it's an unusual show for me, but I wanted you to get to know me. And I wanted you to hear these stories because we need hope. And these are ways that we see hope by working our way through these adversities. And we can apply it to politics today if we need to. Certainly in personal lives, we can apply the stories. That's how we achieve the wonder and the joy and the meaning that God intends us to experience in this life by holding on tight to the adversities, don't compartmentalize, and facing them head on, and forgiving the situation or the people that have caused the adversity, the challenges, or the tragedies. Truly. And I know we don't have time to go into the difficulty of forgiveness. That's another topic. It's not easy, but we're called to do it. It's one of the most holy things that we can do, and it's the pathway that opens up the door to the most important of all of the virtues, and that's love. So have hope out there, America, and to all of you around the world. This current state of affairs is a passing moment in time. God is already winning. It's just us that have to see the timing of it all. And so we give ourselves permission to have patience in all of that. But you have every reason to be hopeful because you have a pack of blessings on your back that I try to remind you about every show as I begin to wrap up. And so, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. Thank you for watching this program and being the support and blessing to me that you have been, and I do not take that for granted. You are a blessing, and I appreciate you very much. Take a moment, please, to consider the support of the page, and remember, YouTube has given us a little warning and cut us off in certain ways. We're still here. We're still able to engage with you, and I can comment, but they've said no more making a living doing this on this platform. So we're suspended for 30 days from making any livelihood at this, and it's we expect, we're conservatives, and so we expect it. It's unfortunate. So if you have the ability and the capability or the desire, and if you feel as if this needs to be supported, we would appreciate it if you would stop by the GoFundMe page. And again, let's have each other's back out there, ladies and gentlemen, in prayer and in determined patriotism as we face all of these challenges that are out there. Administrator Biden is one thing, but we in our lives will face it head on because we're the conservative movement. We don't ignore it. We don't have meltdowns, and we don't give up. We don't throw our hands up and give up on voting or giving up on patriotism and getting involved at the local level and so forth. And finally, don't forget on March 2nd, General Flynn, right back here on the right side with Doug Billings. He's not doing many, if any, other interviews, and so we're lucky to have him here. Our audio issues will be resolved. That first location, that remote location that he was in, gave us some audio problems, but we'll have those fixed. And in the meantime, again, let's have each other's back. I'll meet you in prayer every day. I hope you meet me there as well. And we'll meet again here on the right side with Doug Billings. Head over to Rumble and subscribe. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen, in everything that you face every day. We'll get through it together. Cheers.